Well, the European Union's border operations is preparing for a record number of migrants in 2012. Most of them try to cross the Mediterranean Sea from Africa into Europe. As summer approaches and calmer waters appear, more migrants are likely to try to make the dangerous trip. Hundreds of migrants from across Africa are currently waiting in a holding facility in Libya without aid and health care. They say they will not give up their long and dangerous trek until they reach Europe. Well, among the hundreds of immigrants at the center are 260 males from Senegal, 38 from Eritrea, 17 from Somalia, 43 from Gambia, 28 from Niger, 34 from Sudan, and a few from several other African nations. There are 64 women at the facility, and most of them are from Eritrea and Somalia. Well, Eritrea is the second largest source of migrants after Syria, making the perilous trips across the Mediterranean to Europe. The chairman of the UN Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in Eritrea, Mike Smith, told the UN Human Rights Council that the country's poor human rights situation is to be blamed for the huge exodus of migrants from the Horn of Africa nation. With me in the studio today is Mr. Mike Smith. Welcome to the studio, Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Vincent.
Now, first, we know that when you released this report, the immediate reaction of the Ethiopian authorities was that, well, this is a cooked-up report because they believe that you did not gather the information from credible sources. What do you say?
Well, my first answer to that is we haven't done the report yet. This was an interim report on where we're going. It's a kind of an update on where we're at. My second comment is that, of course, we would most like to be able to gather information inside Eritrea itself. But from the very start, the creation of this commission, the Eritrean government has refused to allow us to visit. Now, they may still decide, and we hope they will change their mind, but for the moment, we can't go to Eritrea to interview people or to inspect the situation, and therefore we have to carry out our investigations from outside. Mm-hmm. And we believe the most credible way to do that is to talk to as many people as we can about their personal experiences, what happened to them. And we've interviewed more than 400 people, and in that respect we are getting a picture that is emerging of problems in the human rights area in a number of different fields.
Yes, and even before you present the final report, you did actually present an interim report to the UN Human Rights Council. Question is, what kind of stories are these people telling you? Is it the same story that can be replicated across these hundreds of people?
No, it's very interesting because every story is different. Every person's life is different. Every person's experiences are different. Every person's personality is different. So the way in which the system that operates in Eritrea impacts on people is always going to be different. Mm-hmm. But by talking to as many people as that, and by collecting all of those stories, when you put them one on top of each other, there are certain common features that emerge, and those are the areas that we've identified as being a particular problem.
Now, what are the specific forms of violations that you kind of heard from all these people?
The biggest one, and the one in a sense which creates many of the others, is the fact that there is universal national service in Eritrea, which is not unusual. Many countries have national service, but in this case, it is unlimited in time. So a young person in year 11 or year 12, say 16 or 17 years old, is obliged to go to do their basic military training. They go there, and then after that, they very often have no further choices in their lives because they get sent into a military unit. In the military unit, they get sent out to work on projects, sometimes in agriculture, mm-hmm. sometimes in infrastructure, sometimes in building, and they are subject to full military discipline, and they can stay there for 10 years, 20 years sometimes. At the same time, they're paid very little. They're paid something like 450 nakfa a month, which current, at least the unofficial rate, is something like $10 a month. Mm-hmm. That is clearly not enough for a person to have a normal life, to be able to support a family.
So they'd rather go away and try to make a living
Exactly.
elsewhere. But there are other groups also
That's
that
the
are
group
being
we're
oppressed.
talking about.
Okay, that's majorly the group
That's
that is
the major
being
thing.
affected.
But there are obviously other problems that happen. The discipline, particularly in the military, is very harsh, and people for minor infractions of the rules can be treated extremely harshly, which verges onto torture. On top of that, there is an imposition by the government of complete control on information, on people's capacity to be able to have a discussion, to debate government policy, any form of criticism that emerges even in a public meeting or between two people can result in someone being punished.
Well, Mr. Smith, thank you very much for giving us those insights.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Mike Smith is the chairman of the UN Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in Eritrea. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com.